Right. Hello guys and welcome to my channel. My name is Mark, I'm an entrepreneur and property investor. I've got about £3 million worth of property and I run several businesses. And on this channel we talk all about things, everything investing, entrepreneurship and all the likes of finance. So today we're going to be talking about the 2022 house price predictions because we've got a lot of information that's just come out of the UK in the spring statements from the Office of Budgetary Responsibility, if I say that right, the OBR. So we're going to be able to dive into a few of their predictions and I'll be able to share that data with you. Obviously, looking at this, the first thing that strikes me is 2022, we're looking at 3.25% as a house price rise, and it starts to reduce after that. We'll talk a little bit about this and a bit of detail of why they believe this is going to happen. And I'm also going to present to you the data of how they come to these decisions and the formula they've used, which is very, very complex. So guys, if you like this sort of content, please give this video a big like. It's the only thing we ask on this channel. It really helps me out with the algorithm when we do no upsell whatsoever. So give it a big like, really does help me out. And if you haven't already subscribed, why not consider subscribing? Because there's no upsell, I'm able to give you all this information without holding anything back at all because I'm not trying to upsell anything. So guys, let's get into the video and let's, in the top corner over there, I'm going to put up a little bit of information from the OBR. And this is the graph of how they're showing what they believe the house price is going to do over the next sort of 5 years or so. And on this, I've gone up to 2026. I think it goes a little bit further in the graph. So as you can see, we've got a really good run last year and everybody knows it was over 10% in terms of growth, but now inflation and the cost of living are starting to bite and we believe that that's going to start coming back down. And in fact, if you consider inflation is currently running at about 7%, 6 or 7%, if we only grow by 3.25% this year, well that'll be a real terms drop, won't it? So there are some interesting things on this, and actually inflation has got some very negative connotations when it comes to investing in property and investing in general. So let's talk about that, let's get into the detail, and first of all let's have a look at the formula, which is massively complex, again image up there, that the OBR used to work out their predictions. And what I'm also going to do is put up a graph where they've shown how their model works in the real life against actuals. So that goes back quite a few years and you'll be able to see that up in the top left hand corner now, or top right hand corner, I'm not sure which it will come out on the video, but up in the corner you'll be able to see that. And you can see that the model matches very accurately, with a little bit of delay, the house prices that goes along. And let's face it, these government organisations have huge amounts of data points. They can really get underneath the data. And I know we all like to slam economists and we like to slam, predictions, but this is about as good as it gets. This is about as close as it gets. You or me working on gut feel are far behind what they're able to get in terms of actual data. So I would always look to the actual data and be able to look at what they're forecasting as a more realistic expectation than what we think from our gut. Because these formulas and these people, they have the data, they have the information. So let's talk about 2022, 3.25%. And when you look at the, if I put up the monthly up there, and I don't think we'll focus on this at all, but I'll put the monthlies up so that you can see that it sort of starts high and starts to drop down throughout the year, but never goes into negative territory on a quarter by quarter basis. And all of those are annual rises. So just so you know. And what I've done is I've taken those quarter bases and I've added them together, divided them by 4 to give me the mean for the year. And then I've put together a very simple structure here for you. 2022, 3.25%. 2023, just about 1%, just under 1%. 2024, 1.88%. 2025, 2.88%. And 2026, 3.54%. Interestingly, we're looking at being below inflation for the next 3 years. So that means in real terms, house prices will drop. Now, that sounds really negative, doesn't it? It is negative in terms of if you're trying to grow your wealth against real terms, but ultimately property pays us twice, doesn't it? It doesn't just pay us with capital appreciation, it also pays us with rent. So our aim is, generally speaking, to get our money into a property, over time for the capital to build up, refinance our money back out, and for the mortgage to be serviced with surplus, i.e. profit for us, by a tenant. And by doing that, we essentially create a little mini business, which pays us every month and eventually has none of our capital in in it. And if you looked at my property portfolio of about 3.2 million today, and again, we track this every month of when it goes up or down, and we see how much that's changed by. So July 2021, it was worth about 3 million. It's gone up by about 200,000 by now, so 3.2. And if we look to the end of this year, we'll be adding another 3% or so on, which I guess would be, I don't know, another 90 grand, wouldn't it? So nearly 3.3 by the end of the year, maybe. That would be the prediction. Maybe we should write that down somewhere. But I haven't got £3 million in those properties, have I? I've only got about £1.2 million or 1.3, something like that, of equity. The rest is loans, which are covered by the tenants. So property investing is very much about making sure that the tenants cover the mortgages, you leave as little amount of capital as you possibly can in the deals over time, and as the prices increase and as you become older, like myself, as I start to become older, I start to de-risk by refinancing less money out. So a lot of people start to do that, and over time inflation eats away at the value of the debt as well as increasing the value of the property. So you win twice. So this 3.25% is slightly troubling because it's going to be below inflation, which means that the value of the property overall will reduce against maybe the cost of bread or against the cost of fuel or whatever you might else look at. And again next year the same will happen, and the same will happen the year after. But what the OBR are essentially saying, with this cost of living squeeze, housing relative to some of these things is going to have to reduce in value. So I think it's a really interesting point, and not many people talk about this, of this versus other things. Housing versus fuel, housing versus staples, bread, clothes, all those other things that are going up in price all the time. Now, if we looked at it purely, let's say for example I had, and we'll keep the figures nice and round today, £200,000. Let's say I had 50,000, I was going to buy a £200,000 house. And it was going to rise, and it was going to rise by 3% over the course of a year, so that would be £6,500 it would go up by. Now, the reality is, if that equity increased over the course of a year and I put £50,000 in, that would still represent to me, as a cash-on-cash equity increase, of over 10%, which is more than inflation. And this is the nuance I want to get across, because whilst that growth might be below inflation, the actual, when it's cash on cash, if you use a mortgage, for example, is going to be above inflation, because inflation's looking at peaking around 7%. So cash on my portfolio, although it's risen by 10%, let's say inflation was 10%, it'll be far, far greater. That doesn't take into consideration the rents, and on a £200,000 property, if you were looking at a single let property, I would guess you'd get about £1,200 a month rent, something like that, maybe £1,100, and you would be looking at a profit on that of about £500 to £600 a month. Which again would give you another 6,000 and another 8 to 10%. As you know on this channel, 8 to 12% single lets, that's about where it is. HMOs, 15 to 25%. So you start to do the maths and you go, actually, it's not terrible that it doesn't grow at the sort of rate it did last year. Last year was an anomaly. If you look back many, many years, there aren't many years where we grew at 10% on house prices, and it cannot be sustained. So 3.25% this year, I think, is an absolutely fantastic number. 0.91 next year, 1.88, 2.88, 3.52. Let me just plug all of that in, I think, and see where I will be for myself, how much money over the next 5 years I could expect to make if the OBR's predictions come true. Let's just plug that in now. So 3.2 million, and let's add it all up. 3.25% plus 0.91%. It's looking good, guys. Oh, I'm going to make £418,000. 3, 6, 118. There we go. Enough zeros? Yep, enough zeros. Perfect. So I'm going to make about £418,000. 418 divided by the 5 years that's going to go past. Let's work out what that is on an annualised basis. £83,000 a year, which is really, really good. Now that is purely the capital appreciation side. That doesn't take into consideration any of the rents. And a lot of people go, well, what happens if interest rates increase? Well, I'll tell you what, rents are increasing if that happens. And the reality is rents are already increasing and at a good pace. Globally, rents are set to increase. I think the prediction was 20%. Now, nobody's predicting 20% in the UK. They're predicting around 10%, in line but behind the house price growth. 20% globally rents are going to increase, 10% in the UK. If the interest rates go up, the rents go up even further because the amount of money we've got to pay out becomes greater. The cost of living gets squeezed even more. This is why it's such a difficult position for the government to be in. Now, there is something around affordability, which I think we should touch on as a nuance, because the affordability is really key on these investments. I think when we enter this cycle, and this is my opinion, I think when we enter this cycle, you're looking for properties that are probably, I think the average is about 280k today. I wouldn't want to be buying anything that was more than 500k. And I think I would be looking in the bracket of somewhere between 180 to 300. Somewhere in that bracket. I think that's a really safe bracket, depending on the area you're in. I think if you're looking at 300k, again, this is really for me to be investing down south, 180k for me to be investing somewhere in the Midlands. As you know on this channel, I don't like 20 grand, 50 grand properties. So guys, that would be where I'm going to be focusing. And in fact, my current purchase that's going through is a flat down in an Oxfordshire town, and it's somewhere in that bracket as well. So I'm practicing what I preach. I'm going exactly where I think the money is going to be made. Because once you start to get into these higher values, I think the affordability is really going to come in if interest rates come up. If you look at a mortgage on a 180k house of 120k, 1 second. This is all getting very, very messy. Right, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'm just going to rub all of this out because it's getting very, very messy. And I'm going to create some space so that we can do an example of why affordability matters and why these properties would be better. So let's go and say we've got a 180k property and we've got a mortgage outstanding of, I don't know, 120k, something like that. That's about right. Maybe it's 130, 120 would do. And interest rates, let's say, rise by a full 1% over the course of this year. Well, that's going to add an extra £1,200 per year to the mortgage cost, right, which is £100 a month. That is unlikely to break somebody. Very unlikely to break somebody. When you go for the bigger numbers and you start saying, okay, well, let's have a look at a 500k house with a 400k mortgage, which 360, 50k mortgage or whatever, somewhere around those sort of numbers. Well, the 1% now is going to be £3,600 per annum. And that property might be very similar. For example, a 500k house in somewhere like Guildford would probably be about the same as a 180k house in somewhere like Northampton. And this is a much larger number extra to find every year. It's £360 per month. And I also think this is why London's lagged everywhere else with this growth. Everywhere else has grown by 10%. London's been like 2. So I think that's why London's lagged, because of the affordability. And I think for me, over the next few years, with the cost of living squeeze, the place to be is somewhere between this 180 and 300. Now, obviously this isn't financial advice. You're an adult, make your own decisions. But guys, this is my insight, and I hope you've enjoyed this video. So guys, give it a big like, subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you on the next one. Cheers guys. Good video.